Have you ever felt like you just don't belong? Like the more you understand the world, the harder it becomes to connect with it? If you've ever sat in a room full of people and felt like an outsider, not because you're shy, but because your thoughts are too heavy, too deep, too different, you're not alone. This feeling isn't weakness, it's not brokenness, it's wisdom. The kind of wisdom that Schopenhauer believed came with a heavy price. Society, for all its polished smiles and empty small talk, has always feared one thing above all else: the deeply intelligent. Not because they're wrong, but because they see too much. From the trial of Socrates to the silence of Nikola Tesla, history is littered with the shattered lives of people who thought too deeply, questioned too boldly, and refused to shut up just to fit in. Arthur Schopenhauer, one of the darkest minds in philosophy, didn't see intelligence as a gift. He saw it as a curse, a cruel curse that isolates those who see the world too clearly. But why? Why does the world push away those who think deeper, who seek truth, who question the rules everyone else follows blindly? To answer that, we need to look into the mind itself. When you stand next to someone physically strong, you may feel admiration. Even when someone is rich, you may feel envy, but not threat. But stand beside someone with true intellectual power, someone who can see through lies, someone who speaks truth with terrifying clarity, and suddenly you feel something else entirely. Discomfort. That feeling is what psychologists call the mirror effect. A deep thinker, even when silent, becomes a mirror to the people around them. They don't just speak, they reflect. They reflect back others' weaknesses, ignorance, and unexamined lives. And that's something the average person cannot stand. Unlike physical strength or wealth, intelligence cuts deeper. It's not about muscles or money, it's about identity. We define ourselves by our thoughts, by what we believe is true. So when a wise person questions those beliefs, it feels like a personal attack. Not because they are cruel, but because their very existence is proof that there is more to know, more to question, more to fear, and most people don't want that. They want comfort, not truth. Have you ever tried bringing up something deep at a party? A truth that matters? A question that makes people pause. And suddenly, blank stares, nervous laughs, a quick shift back to gossip or sports. That's not just awkwardness, that's a defense mechanism. The brain shuts down uncomfortable truths. It prefers ignorance dressed as certainty. That's why confident fools are more accepted than silent sages. In social psychology, this is everywhere. Studies show that in groups, people value confidence over complexity. They prefer someone who sounds sure, even if they're wrong, over someone who speaks with nuance and thought. Why? Because people don't want truth. They want validation. They want someone to tell them they're right, not challenge them to think. Look at the most popular influencers, political leaders, or internet personalities. The ones who rise aren't the wisest. They're the loudest. They sell certainty, simple answers, easy lies. Meanwhile, the ones who ask real questions, who refuse to dumb down their thoughts, they're sidelined, forgotten, or worse, mocked. This is the paradox of intelligence. The more clearly you see, the lonelier you become. You become a threat. Not because you attack others, but because your presence alone exposes what they're running from. Modern neuroscience proves this. When someone feels intellectually outmatched, their brain reacts the same way it would to danger. The amygdala, the part of the brain that handles fear, lights up. Deep thinking actually triggers a survival response. Why? Because for most of human history, survival didn't depend on truth. It depended on tribe, belonging, conformity. Fitting in meant safety. Being different meant danger. So when a deep thinker enters a group, they disrupt the balance. They introduce a doubt. They bring discomfort, and the group, consciously or not, pushes them out. You may think you're just sharing an idea, but to the group, you're a threat to their harmony, their certainty, their fragile sense of identity. This is why so many wise people walk alone. Not because they want to, but because they must. In 2021, a Stanford study revealed something disturbing. In one-on-one settings, people can handle intelligent conversations, but in group settings, the threat level spikes. Why? Because in groups, people don't just fear being wrong, they fear looking wrong. And so, when someone says something too deep, too different, the group often responds by mocking, ignoring, or silencing them, not because they hate the person, but because they fear what that person represents. This fear is reinforced by several powerful psychological biases. The Dunning-Kruger effect, where the ignorant overestimate themselves, while the truly intelligent doubt their own views, creates a strange dynamic. Those who know little are the loudest, and those who know much stay quiet. The status quo bias, our brain's tendency to prefer familiar ideas, makes people resist change, even when it's for the better. And the backfire effect, where people double down on false beliefs when presented with contradictory evidence, makes intelligent discussion nearly impossible. These biases aren't rare, they're everywhere, in every group, in every culture, especially in the digital age. Social media thrives on simplicity, not depth. Algorithms reward outrage, not insight. The more extreme, emotional, and dumbed down a message is, the faster it spreads. Deep thinkers, by nature, struggle with this. Their ideas are complex, their words are careful, their minds crave truth, not clicks. But the world doesn't want depth anymore. It wants dopamine, fast content, easy content, loud content. That's why intelligent voices are often drowned out by noise. So what can a wise person do? Should they stay silent? Should they dumb themselves down just to fit in? Absolutely not. Schopenhauer would argue that the wise must expect isolation, not resent it. Because fitting in often means giving up what makes you different. And for the wise, that difference is everything. Schopenhauer didn't see intelligence as a path to happiness. He saw it as a path to awakening. But awakening comes with pain. He believed that most people live by what he called the will, a blind drive to survive, to consume, to seek pleasure. Most people are ruled by instinct. They want comfort, pleasure, and safety. But the truly wise, he said, are ruled by a different will, a will to truth, and truth, by its very nature, is uncomfortable. It doesn't make life easier. It makes life clearer. It forces you to see behind the masks, to notice the emptiness behind society's smiles, the lies behind its rules, the fear behind its traditions. And once you see that, you can't unsee it. This is why wise people never truly fit in. not because they're arrogant, not because they're broken, but because they choose clarity over comfort, and that choice comes at a cost. But it also comes with a reward. While others are trapped in shallow games, seeking approval, chasing trends, worshipping illusions, the wise are free, free to think, free to see, free to live according to something deeper than fear. So if you've ever felt like you don't belong, like your mind is too heavy for this world, remember this: you are not broken, you are awake. And in a world that worships sleep, being awake is the most dangerous thing you can be, but it is also the most powerful, because the world doesn't change by those who follow. It changes by those who dare to see it for what it is, and still choose to speak, no matter the cost. Most people spend their lives chasing pleasure and avoiding pain. That's normal. It's what society teaches us from childhood, that happiness lies in comfort, entertainment, success, and relationships. But for deep thinkers, the truth isn't that simple. Wise people, the ones who actually think beyond the surface, aren't addicted to pleasure. They're obsessed with truth, even when that truth is dark, even when it hurts, even when it isolates them from everyone else. And that's exactly why they never truly fit in. You see, where regular people find meaning in the ordinary, in a job, a relationship, a weekend party, deep thinkers feel strangely disconnected. They look at these pleasures, and instead of feeling joy, they often feel empty, because they can see through it all. They don't see fun, they see distraction. They don't see connection, they see masks. And once you start seeing life like that, it becomes almost impossible to go back. Arthur Schopenhauer understood this. He believed the more a person understands human nature, the harder it becomes to relate to people. Because when you see clearly, you see the lies. You see the constant social games, the fake smiles, the empty talk. Most people speak in small talk because it's safe. Deep thinkers, they want something real. They want conversations about meaning, suffering, death, freedom, things society avoids like the plague. That's why even a casual conversation can feel exhausting to someone who's deeply intelligent. Not because they're arrogant, but because their mind craves depth like oxygen, and the shallow world suffocates them. Schopenhauer believed that ambition, the very thing most people live for, is nothing but illusion. People chase money, empower, sex, and approval without ever stopping to ask why. And when a deep thinker does ask that question, they start seeing just how fragile and desperate human desire really is. It makes them feel out of place, cold, indifferent, not because they lack emotion, but because they see too clearly to pretend. That's why intelligent people are often misunderstood. Their silence is mistaken for arrogance. Their honesty is mistaken for rudeness. Their distance is mistaken for superiority. But in truth, their presence is threatening, not because they're wrong, but because they're right. And nothing scares the average person more than being exposed to uncomfortable truth. Schopenhauer once wrote, "A high degree of intellect tends to make a man unsocial." And his reasoning was painfully simple. The more you understand, the less you can ignore. The more clearly you see the world's flaws, the harder it is to find happiness in it. So the smarter you are, the lonelier you become. He believed ignorance, and not intelligence, was the real path to happiness. That's why the wisest minds in history, Pascal, Nietzsche, Kafka, suffered. They weren't broken, they were awake. They had to carry the weight of awareness in a world that wanted sleep. But Schopenhauer didn't stop there. He didn't just diagnose the problem, he offered a kind of solution. First, embrace solitude. Don't treat it like a punishment. Treat it like a weapon. While the world begs for attention, you protect your peace. Use your time alone not to escape life, but to deepen your understanding of it. Read, write, think, create. Let your solitude become your strength, not your weakness. Second, find your tribe, but don't expect to find it in the mainstream. Schopenhauer advised intellectuals to seek out others like them, not in crowded rooms or loud conversations, but in books, philosophy, and private circles where thought is still sacred. You don't need a crowd, you just need a few minds that burn as deeply as yours. Third, be strategic. Don't share your deepest insights with people who aren't ready to hear them. Truth is a blade. If you hand it to someone unprepared, they'll turn it on you. Observe society, learn its patterns. Speak with precision. Share wisdom only where it can be understood, and protect it where it can't. Schopenhauer's philosophy is more relevant today than ever before. In a world drowning in noise, he reminds us that deep thought will always feel lonely, not because something is wrong with you, but because something is missing from the world. Intelligence is a double-edged sword. It gives you clarity, but it takes away comfort. It shows you the truth, but steals your innocence. It frees you, but it also isolates you. And in a society built on illusions, truth will always feel like a threat. That's why society doesn't really hate intelligence. It hates what intelligence reveals. Deep thinkers aren't rejected because they're fools. They're rejected because they're honest, because they see too much, because they see too early. So if you've ever felt like an outsider, like no one really understands how deeply you think or how deeply you feel, know this: you're not broken. You're simply awake. You're seeing the world not as it pretends to be, but as it truly is. But does that mean you're doomed to walk alone forever? Does being a deep thinker mean a lifetime of silence and solitude? Not necessarily. But it does mean learning how to move through the world without losing yourself to it. The truth is, society isn't designed to welcome deep thinkers. It's designed for order, not for insight. It runs on predictability, not truth. And most people will always choose comfort over clarity. That's why shallow entertainment, recycled opinions, and emotional clickbait dominate every corner of social life. People crave ease, not challenge. Simplicity, not complexity. Emotional validation, not intellectual growth. Why is that? Why do most people reject intellectual depth even when it leads to better outcomes? It starts in the mind. Human psychology is built for survival, not understanding. The brain prefers certainty over doubt, familiarity over confusion. This tendency is called cognitive ease. It's why your brain lights up when it hears a catchy slogan and shuts down when it hears a difficult truth. Then there's system, justification. People instinctively defend the world they know, even when it's broken. They'd rather believe a comforting lie than face an uncomfortable truth. Because change, even positive change, feels like danger. And finally, groupthink. Humans are tribal. We're wired to belong, to fit in, to avoid rejection. That's why most people will adopt the loudest opinion in the room, even if it's wrong. Truth is not popular, it's polarizing. And that makes deep thinkers dangerous. That's why philosophers, scientists, and visionaries throughout history were rarely embraced in their lifetimes. Their ideas weren't just misunderstood, they were feared. Today, in the digital age, it's even worse. Social media rewards short attention spans. It favors dopamine over depth. Who goes viral? Not the thinkers, but the entertainers. The ones who take complex ideas and water them down into emotional sound bites. Because depth takes time, and algorithms don't wait. We live in an age of echo chambers, where people only hear what they already believe. Critical thinking is drowned out by outrage, jokes, and viral trends. The thinkers, they're either ignored or attacked. But this war on depth didn't start online. It started in the places that shaped your mind, the education system. Schools say they value intelligence, but what they really reward is obedience. Memorize, repeat, pass. But question authority, challenge the system, think differently. Then you're the problem. You're disruptive. The workplace, it's no different. The most intelligent person in the room isn't always the one who gets promoted. It's the one who plays the game, the one who doesn't rock the boat. Corporations don't reward brilliance, they reward compliance. And politics? Charisma beats truth every time. Tell people what they want to hear, and you win. Tell them what they need to hear, and you lose. It's why most great minds are remembered only after they're gone, when their ideas are finally safe. Society says it loves intelligence, but what it really loves is comfort. And intelligence isn't comfortable, not for the thinker, not for the listener. So remember this. If you're a deep thinker, your struggle is not a weakness. It's a mark of clarity in a world that prefers fog. And while the world may never fully accept you, that's not your burden to carry, because you're not here to fit in. You're here to see and help others see, even if it means walking alone. They locked up Galileo for speaking the truth. They mocked Van Gogh while he poured his soul into every stroke of paint. He died with nothing, and now his art is priceless. Tesla dreamed of giving the world free energy and died penniless, forgotten in a hotel room. Do you see the pattern? Society doesn't celebrate deep thinkers when they're alive. It celebrates them when they're no longer a threat, when their ideas are safe, and when they're dead. The harsh truth is this: intelligence, when it threatens the comfort of the masses, is seen as dangerous. Society doesn't hate genius. It fears what genius represents: change. So if you've ever felt like your mind doesn't fit the world around you, you're not broken. You're ahead of your time. Look at Socrates, a man who lived for truth and died because of it. He didn't just teach philosophy, he lived it. He asked questions no one dared to ask, challenged traditions that kept people in mental chains. And what did they do? They killed him. Not because he was wrong, but because he forced people to think. That's what made him dangerous. Then there's Galileo. He didn't try to rebel. He simply described what he saw, the earth moving around the sun. But that truth shattered centuries of lies held up by religion and power. And for that, he was silenced, forced to deny his own discoveries, and locked away for the rest of his life. Even truth has enemies when it threatens control. And Nietzsche, the man who saw too deeply into the soul of mankind. He said what others wouldn't: that our morals are often lies we tell ourselves to avoid pain, that we must create meaning in a world without any. People called him mad. They ignored him. And now, his words shape modern philosophy and psychology. But only after he was gone. Why? Because visionaries don't fit in. They challenge the world instead of pleasing it. They speak truths that make others uncomfortable. They point to the cracks in the system and say, this is not okay. They don't follow. They disturb. Look at Nikola Tesla, the man who imagined a future far beyond his time. Free energy, wireless power, a world connected through invisible waves. But the powerful hated that vision. Why give energy to the world for free when you can sell it? So they buried him, destroyed his funding, and he died alone, while others profited off his stolen genius. And then there's Alan Turing, a man who helped end a world war. His work created the foundations of computers, of artificial intelligence, this very world we live in now. And yet, because of who he loved, he was punished, humiliated, driven to suicide. Genius means nothing to society if it doesn't fit the mold. And Hypatia, a woman in a world that feared women with power. She taught science, logic, astronomy, in a time when men believed knowledge belonged to them, and for that, she was slaughtered by a mob. Her death wasn't just murder. It was a warning to anyone who dares to think freely in a world ruled by fear. Each of these thinkers shared the same fate, not because they were wrong, but because they were too right, too soon. They saw what others couldn't see. They said what others weren't ready to hear. Their lives prove one brutal reality. Society doesn't destroy genius because it hates intelligence. It destroys genius because it fears transformation. So what does this mean? For you, if you think deeply, if you question everything, if you feel like you never quite fit in, you're not lost. You're just early. You're part of a long line of minds who walked this earth misunderstood. But being ahead of your time doesn't mean you're doomed. It means you must move wisely. Not every person deserves your depth. Not every room is built for your voice. You don't have to shout your truth to everyone. Sometimes the wisest thing is to speak only to those who are truly listening. You don't need millions to understand you. You just need the right few. Seek out your tribe. Read the works of others who think like you. Join conversations that go beyond small talk. Learn how to express big ideas in simple words. If a thought is truly deep, it can be spoken clearly. As Einstein said, if you can't explain it simply, you don't understand it well enough. And Schopenhauer, the dark philosopher of will and suffering, said it best. Talent hits a target no one else can hit. Genius hits a target no one else can see. You're not strange. You just see the world differently, and that's your strength. The world may not welcome you right now, but that doesn't mean you should betray your mind. Keep thinking deeply. Keep asking why. Keep seeing what others ignore, because in the end, it's not the loudest voices that change the world. It's the silent minds who refuse to stop thinking. So if you've ever felt like an outsider, not because you're weak, but because your thoughts don't match the noise of the crowd, remember this: you are not alone. The world fears deep thinkers, but it is deep thinkers who drag humanity forward, inch by inch, idea by idea. So stay the course, think boldly, speak truth when it matters, and never shrink to fit into a world that was never built for minds like yours. If this spoke to your soul, then speak back. Tell us in the comments. Have you ever been rejected for thinking too deeply? Let's build a space for people who see beyond the surface. And if you want more wisdom from the great minds who saw what others couldn't, subscribe. This is only the beginning.